Well, for more details on the latest of what's going on in Syria, we're joined now by Scott Lucas, Professor of International Politics at University College Dublin, currently joining us from Birmingham in the UK. Thanks so much for being with us. First of all, what do these rebel advances tell us about the Syrian government forces and their preparedness?
It tells us that the Assad regime, politically and militarily, not only was fragile, it in effect was only existing because of support by Iran, Russia, and Hezbollah. Once Iran and Russia came under strain for various reasons in providing their support, Russia because of its invasion of Ukraine, Iran because of its problems across the Middle East, then it was a question of whether the rebels would be able to be organized enough to actually begin to take territory. Not only did they take territory, I think they surprised all analysts by the speed in which they do it. So, just to put this in perspective, when Russia and the Assad regime recaptured the eastern part of Aleppo in 2015, 2016, it was with more than a year of bombing, ground assaults, and sieges. The rebels captured Aleppo, one of Syria's two largest cities, within 4 days. In other words, the Assad regime did not have effective defenses, only on paper, but not in reality.
Who are these rebels? Can you tell us more about their makeup?
The largest group amongst the rebels is called Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. Now, this is a descendant of groups that until 2015 were linked to al-Qaeda, but those groups broke from al-Qaeda and have not been part of that organization for almost a decade. HTS is still an Islamist group. It still carries out its version of Islamist law and governance in the areas of northwest Syria that it controls. But there are also other anti-Assad groups who are in this offensive. Those groups who are part of what is called the Syrian National Army. They are backed by Turkey, and Turkey has backed them for a long time. So what we have is we have a coalition of groups, some of them secular, some of them Islamist, but all of them are united with this goal that almost 14 years after the Syrian uprising started, they still want to get rid of the Assad regime throughout all of the Syria, not just the northwest of the country.
Now, the attack was launched, of course, last Wednesday, the day of the official ceasefire in Lebanon. I've heard some commentators mention that this could be seen as that conflict migrating in a way, as it has many of the same players. How do you see it?
Well, I mean, pro-Assad commentators, including in Western countries, including in France, are portraying some giant conspiracy that Israel arranged the ceasefire in Lebanon so it could support groups to attack in Syria. That's completely untrue. Israel has nothing to do with what is happening in Syria. But I do think there is a connection in the sense that Hezbollah has been seriously weakened by Israel's strikes on its command structure, including the killing of the leader Hassan Nasrallah and almost all of the senior commanders that were in Beirut. Therefore, Hezbollah fighters were not as effectively organized. They controlled many of the positions in northwest Syria, but without an effective command structure, it was easy for the anti-Assad rebels to attack them, as well as regime forces, and as well as Iranian forces, who are also in the area.
So, as you've already mentioned, a lot of Assad's allies have again pledged support for him, but they're severely weakened right now. Where do you see the conflict going from here?
I think it's important really to watch Russia at this point. There have been signs of, Syrian sovereignty must be upheld, its territory must be defended. Bashar al-Assad was reportedly in Moscow on Friday, probably trying to appeal for help from Vladimir Putin. But do we actually see Russia mobilize its ground forces and its air forces as it did in 2015, not only to save the Assad regime, but to then take a great deal of territory back from the rebels? So far, we haven't seen that Russian mobilization. Iran is in serious trouble. They've been weakened by Israeli attacks on their own command structure, including targeted assassinations, and there's no sign of them being able to come in and save the day. I do think that the Assad regime is going to try to limit this. They're drawing their defense lines in northern Hama province, which is to the south of Aleppo. I think the Iranians and the Russians may be giving advice on how to maintain those defense lines, but I don't think they're going to commit their forces in great numbers to try to turn this around for Assad.
Thank you very much for that, Scott Lucas from University College Dublin, for that analysis.